what I've come down to in my burnout and all of this is just the capacity to shame myself less. Like that, for me, is the cycle breaking. That's it. I mean, there's more than that, but that's the heart of it. And moving away from like, how do I continually pressure myself to be a more evolved, more emotionally intelligent, more healed mom? Because that is just like fueling the cycle of acting out those strategies against myself. And so I don't want to say like luckily, but like I found myself in a place of like such intense burnout that like I don't have the capacity to use those strategies. Like I've got nothing. And so all that I have is this agency within myself to be like, it is not realistic. That is not a realistic expectation for you today, Amanda. What is? And if you did something that you don't love in your parenting journey today, like how can you repair with your child, my child, and then repair with myself?
Welcome to the Transforming Trauma podcast. Transforming Trauma is presented by the Complex Trauma Training Center. I'm your host, Emily Ruth, and I'm so glad you've joined us today. And now for our interview. Amanda Losch is a therapist and private practice owner based in the Chicago suburbs, specializing in developmental trauma. Her work is deeply informed by both her clinical training and lived experience as a neurodivergent parent. Currently stepping back from direct practice to care for her neurodivergent family, Amanda is building a local resource network for neurodivergent families and offering education to organizations on safety, accessibility, and inclusion. She brings a thoughtful, grounded perspective to the intersections of neurodivergence, parenting, chronic health, and trauma. Please enjoy my conversation with Amanda Losch. Okay, today I am joined by Amanda Losch. Welcome to Transforming Trauma.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, this is so great to see your face. Amanda, you're just glowing today. I'm so excited to talk to you. And I know we've had some conversations leading up to this, and there's a lot that I know that I will learn. So I'm excited for this.
Thank you. I am too.
Well, yeah, I'd love to begin by asking you what you'd like our listeners to come away with from our conversation today.
I think what I would like people to come away with is the ability to find kindness towards themselves and hopefully shame themselves less as they navigate their parenting journey. And if possible, move a little bit towards acceptance in that process.
Yeah. Oh, I just felt my shoulders drop as you said that. Yeah. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about, who you are, where you are in the world, and the work that you're doing, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. So my name is Amanda. I live in the Chicago suburbs with my family, my husband, and 2 kids. I've been a therapist for the last 10 years, which is a little crazy to think about. And right now I'm taking a bit of a break to be a caregiver to my family and also working on some passion projects, which are volunteer-based, creating resources for neurodivergent families in the Chicagoland area to find community and to make empowered choices for their family. So that's kind of where my time is spent these days. And it's been a learning and growing process.
So 10 years ago, you became a therapist. Can I ask what even brought you to that place, becoming a therapist?
I think like a lot of us, probably my own history, there was a really deep desire to understand my internal world and to understand the dynamics that I grew up with. I always was curious as to what is going on here? Why does it feel the way that it does? And how do I move through that? So I think it was a deep desire for answers and for knowing. And then in that process, found my natural capabilities to be present with other people, to hold space for people navigating difficult things and really enjoying creating that space for others. It's been beautiful on both ends, personally and in the support of other people.
Yeah, so there's your personal connection to the work. And how did you find NARM? And maybe I can ask where in your professional journey did you find NARM?
I feel like I was lucky because I found NARM about 5 years into my professional journey. So I hadn't really solidified myself in any particular modality. I had gone to grad school and learned all the basics, CBT, ACT, and I had found that I was really stuck with my clients. I wanted to be able to go deeper, and I didn't have the skills. I had intuition, but I didn't have this foundational understanding of how to use that in specific ways. So I was on a Facebook therapist group for therapists in Chicago, and Bianca Hardin, who is a wonderful therapist and practice owner in the Chicago area, had posted that they were starting a NARM cohort in Chicago. And I was like, hey, what's NARM? She's like, call me. I was like, okay. So I called her on the phone and she talked about it. I was like, I don't really know about this, but I'm in. Here's my money. And I'm so glad that I did, because having the foundation of NARM at the beginning of my practice, shaping the way that I work with clients, it changed everything for me professionally, and then also personally invited so much deeper healing into my own life. And then the other really cool piece is that I had this NARM framework before I was a parent. And so all of these things kind of tie together, but that has made me feel very fortunate to have this understanding of myself and of humans as I entered the most human thing I've ever done, which is attempt to raise smaller humans.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so beautiful. And there's part of me that is envious that you had this before starting that journey. Yeah, that's so real.
It is.
It's always so interesting to me when I'm talking to folks. A lot of us, I'm not everyone, but a lot of us don't actually know that much before we sign up. We're just like, I don't know what this is. I'm drawn to it. I don't know. Here's my
Yes.
money. It's kind of wild. There's some, I don't know. For me, I felt something, but I don't know. Don't want to project that onto you. But what about it drew you and made you willing to like sign up and do the thing?
It was a feeling like a lot of the language that was used, a lot of the concepts that were being explored felt very personally aligned with me. Like sometimes I think about it like if I were to be a therapy model, I think it would be NARM, because like it just feels so close to the way that I already process the world. And I feel like it gave me the theoretical and sort of scientific know-how to combine with the intuition and sense of, human relationship that I already had. And then I could like artfully apply those things instead of like, I feel like I should say this. I feel like I should do this. Here's the context to put it all together. So again, I can make like more conscious decisions on how I provide this intervention while being rooted in just this is a way of being. So that was really cool. I was excited about that. And I remember this was back when like trainings were in person. We were in the room and I think it was like the first day we got to, or maybe the first evening, watch Larry do a demo. And it was like the first time seeing NARM. And I was just like, I love this. This is so cool. I was so intrigued by what I was seeing and the way that I felt in myself while I was watching it. That was kind of, I don't want to say like hooked. It sounds like a little, intense, but I was so curious. And I think that's like the heart of this model is that curiosity. So I was sparked from that first night, and it had only grown since then. I remember like I would come home after every class, and my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, was like, "You're glowing. You can't stop talking. You're so alive. Like, let's go out for our post-NARM dinner and just tell me everything you learned." Because
Oh, I love it.
I mean, he always says that I am like light up when I talk about NARM. So hopefully that answered your question. It was a little long.
Yes. Yes, I love it. It kind of sparks something in me, or something I actually have wanted to talk to you about anyway, is like, I'm curious what feels most alive for you as we're talking about this, because I know you have content out in the world, you've got these passion projects, and I'm kind of observing, and just watching you pull these things together that feel really important. And so I'm curious, what feels most alive for you in this intersection of talking about complex
Mm.
trauma and parenting? And can we name neurodivergence?
Yeah,
Because that's
please.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm noticing just like as I'm even sharing about that debrief that I had with my husband, just how integral NARM has been in our relationship. And then, like, I was in trainings or co-TAing trainings while I was pregnant, I think, with both of my kids. So they received NARM training in some way.
Oh.
And, like, our family and our life has been steeped in NARM, not like the therapeutic interventions of NARM, but like the NARM way of being. That
Mm.
relational piece has been foundational again to how we're trying to raise our children, how we're trying to parent, and all of our stuff that has come up along the way. So I think that that just feels really interesting to me because the clinical piece I knew to expect, but this whole relational piece in real time has been sort of this secondary gift of NARM.
Yeah, that unfolding, I know, and I know everyone experiences it differently. So we don't want to I don't want to label, any experience as being the right one, but I've heard that before of like how it has informed all of us in our personal lives. And like I like how you said that, the NARM way of being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had no idea that that would be what came out of what I thought was like a professional training. Oh,
Mhm.
I'm going here to learn therapeutic interventions. And it's like,
Mm.
no. I mean, yes, yes. And
That is a
also,
part of it.
so much more than
Mhm.
just a training. So much more than just a
Yeah.
training.
Yeah. I wondered if we could move into a little bit because you've spoken so beautifully about how much of what parents carry and maybe more especially mothers,
Mm,
that it's often the failure of an environment. And
yeah.
I'm curious how you see, systemic pressure shaping a lot of our internalized beliefs. And I think I've seen you name in some of your posts and stuff like this "I'm not enough"
Yeah.
feeling. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. I was actually like kind of coming up with a post last night. It was like just a to do list for moms in 2026. This is what I feel like society is wanting for moms in 26. It's like heal your own trauma, stay up to date on parenting techniques, have, solid relationships, stay regulated all of the time while you're regulating everybody else, like dismantle the patriarchy and white supremacy, hold endless bad news, like take care of everybody's needs, take care of like your house, take care of all the invisible labor that's going
Mhm.
on. Like it just feels like such a long and heavy list. And I think it's really wonderful that we have evolved as a society, that we're more aware of trauma and aware the ways this is all coming out in our parenting. But the pressuring of having that figured out and doing that all the time, on top of all the pressures of being a parent in general, has, in my experience and the experience of a lot of my clients, led to a lot of shame around like, why can't I carry all of this? Why am I still yelling? Why am I showing up as this kind of a mom? And that one line from NARM has like helped me so much, which is like the child internalizes the failure of the environment as a failure of self. Like this continues to play out. We are internalizing the failure of the system as a failure of self when really like it is not possible for us to hold all of this. And there is no realistic way that we can show up in the way that we feel we're supposed to in 2026 expectations.
Right.
So
Yeah, I just wanna take a breath on that.
yeah, you're a mom, it's like, it's
Yes.
crazy.
It's so wild, and I just so appreciate, and I've connected with some of these things that you've put, or pretty much every post that you've put out, I'm, like, shaking my head, "Yep, that feels so true," and not only the heaviness and that weight that we're carrying, but then to shame ourselves and to
Yes.
pressure ourselves around getting it right and like
Breaking
you
the
said,
cycle.
right, breaking the cycle, which is like real.
Yeah.
That's real. And now that we know about it, so much is still out of our control. There's a lot of things that
Yes.
we don't. So really honing in and of course with the NARM framework, it's like we're holding agency and
Mhm.
recognizing, okay, in my agency, what part of this am I pressuring myself too much to get it right or get it perfect? And there's a balance I find myself constantly trying to have around that. So I really appreciated you naming that. I love the way you were just talking about that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think like one of the things I said earlier in the podcast, I'm so lucky that I had this information before I'm a parent. The other side of that, like I know Brad has always said that we can use any information against ourselves. So at first,
Right.
I used the NARM model against myself of like, oh my God, I'm misattuning all of the time. Is it less than 40%? Is it 60% that I'm misattuning? Like, oh no, he's definitely developing autonomy survival style right now. Like there are so many ways to use that information against myself. And so I've had to, come around the other side of how do I use that information in the way that is actually beneficial to me, which is what I've come down to in my burnout and all of this is just the capacity to shame myself less. Like that for me is the cycle breaking. That's it. I mean, there's more than that, but that's the heart of it. And moving away from like, how do I continually pressure myself to be a more evolved, more emotionally intelligent, more healed mom? Because that is just like fueling the cycle of acting out those strategies against myself. And so I don't want to say like luckily, but like I found myself in a place of like such intense burnout that like I don't have the capacity to use those strategies, like, I've got nothing, and so all that
Mhm.
I have is this agency within myself to be like, "It is not realistic. That is not a realistic expectation for you today, Amanda. What is? And if you did something that you don't love in your parenting journey today, like, how can you repair with your child, my child, and then repair with myself. Like that, like at the end of the day, that is where I'm using my agency right now because I just don't have the capacity to be doing
Yeah.
a lot of the things.
Yeah, you're really helping me hold a lot of I had this random memory just pop up. Literally, I think I was 9 or 10 years old. I remember picking up a self-help book. That was probably like the first,
Yes.
moment of, "Emily, you've gotta figure this out. You need
Mhm.
to read this and learn and fix yourself." So by 9 or 10 years old, a lot of parents, a lot of women, I think are on a similar trajectory, and I just so appreciate the naming of, okay, what would it mean even if all I did was to stop the shaming of myself? To me, it feels like it would be a domino effect that there's other things that would change if when we're able to do just that one thing. That if I'm not shaming myself, there's other things that will follow if I'm starting there. And I like how you named too. I don't know. For me, it just feels like this culture of self-perfection, like always
Mhm.
having to perfect ourselves. And so, again, bring it back to something you said earlier of like this NARM way of being. What if
Yeah.
I'm not doing and trying to perfect myself? What if I can just be?
Yeah.
And what shifts there? It's really incredible.
Yeah, and even just coming back to your language, like, I think you said even if we started with just not shaming, but just not shaming
Mhm.
is the heart, like,
It's the
is the
thing.
hardest root
Yeah.
of so much of these survival strategies is like how do we shame and reject and hate ourselves
Mhm.
through all of these survival strategies. And so like quote unquote just working on not
Right.
shaming yourself or just moving towards like being more human with yourself like theoretically is the most radical
Mhm.
healing piece of it
Mhm.
all. So
Yeah.
I that's been really
Yeah.
helpful for me when I let go of that expectation of like, I need to be in my own NARM therapy like once a week, and I need to be like in the trauma work, and I need to be peeling back all these layers and doing, it's
Yeah.
like that actually was okay. I didn't have the capacity for that mentally. So I had to just like let go of that version of healing and really come back to again, like what is accessible to me from a healing standpoint at this particular juncture in my life. The reality is I'm living in survival mode, and I need to live in survival mode. Like it's like I'm
Yeah.
not able with what's going on in my personal life to access this like super thriving transcendent way of being. And so like what can I still do in survival mode? And that's really just come down to be aware, be with myself, repair, and try not to shame. And I
Mhm.
honestly think that that's creating really important, deep change inside of myself and hopefully relationally with
Mhm.
the people that I live with and
Yeah.
interact with,
Yeah. And again, I just want to take a deep breath
Yeah.
'cause that's playing out in my own life as well. Yeah, how often are we finding ourselves like, this is a season where I might just be in survival, and can I be okay with that? Can
Yeah.
I sort of relax into, okay, so what does it mean to just be here
Mhm.
instead of trying to do so much? How can I just be here? So yeah, that moves me even just the way you said that. So I appreciate you sharing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I think that there's maybe a misconception about like what acceptance is. Like I feel like sometimes at least the way I interpret it is that like, oh, to get to a place of acceptance, I have to be good with the way everything's happening in my
Mhm.
life. That I'm like just radically accepting like this is okay. Like this is it's like I don't even think it is that. I think it's just
Mhm.
like taking the information as it's coming in real time and being with it objectively. It's like you don't
Mhm.
have to like love where your life is right now,
Right.
but where realistically is your life right now? And
Mhm.
then what do we want to do with that? How do we want to be in relationship to that? Maybe there are parts of it that you love, and there are parts you want to shift and change. And then maybe there are parts that just have to be a certain way right now. And again, that doesn't mean that there's no agency available to you. There still is. And it might just be in your own way of being towards yourself and towards your children. And that's still just as powerful, I believe.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. What helps you or your people that you're supporting really distinguish what's truly in your control from what's coming from a systemic kind of overwhelm and maybe even developmental trauma? Because I find myself often trying you're nodding
I
your
mean,
head,
that's a
so
big question. It's I that
Amanda, solve it for me.
okay, here's step 1 through 4. I think the place that I see this the most is in my relationship with my husband because we're having to like how do I say this? Like there are a lot of situations that are unfolding in real time. We have a very neurodivergent family. We have a lot of dynamic disability. People's dynamic disabilities are interacting with each other in day to day in different ways. It's a lot. And so there's always these moments that come up where a situation arises. There's stuff in my personal history that begins to come up from like a developmental trauma standpoint. There's stuff that starts to come up for him from a developmental trauma standpoint. There's these expectations we have about how we're supposed to be parenting in those moments where our trauma is coming up. There's what our child needs. Like there's just like such a layered experience unfolding in real time, and those have been some of the hardest times to like pull apart to figure out what's what. And so I think it's been really helpful for me to get clear about like what my capacity is on any given day, because like I have my own like dynamic disability from mental health standpoint and a physical health standpoint. And then same thing with my husband. What is his realistic capacity for the day, just from an internal and physical standpoint? And then like how do we figure out like what level of expectation is appropriate within those limitations? And again, like that's really challenging. And we do get into, arguments as we figure that out. But I do feel like we've gotten a lot better in like not shaming ourselves individually as a couple. We're getting better at like repairing internally and with our children, and letting go of any expectation of what we thought parenting should look like or would look like, and allowing ourselves to figure out what it needs to look like for our specific family. And that is evolving. That's evolving all of the time, but we're like constantly sort of feeling the tension of like, this response is coming up based on how my parents parented me.
Mhm.
Okay, I don't want that, but that's really activated right now. Or like this projection is happening based on like an experience I've had, and that's playing out right now. And I feel like I'm supposed to be regulated all the time because that's what like all the posts on Instagram say, but I'm super dysregulated right now, and that's like fueling my child's dysregulation. Like it's so complex. And so I'm grateful that I have a relationship where like afterwards we can kind of like slow down and parse that out and sort of figure out like what we need to do individually, relationally, and as a family to keep getting closer to, again, like what is right for us and not
Yeah.
what society says it should look like, or even what we thought it should look like 6 months ago,
Mhm.
a year ago.
Yeah. In that, I'm wondering, am I hearing you describe, I mean, does naming the environmental failures help you shift that shame of like, "Oh, I see that. Okay, I'm not gonna take that on. That's an environmental failure. Here's what I can maybe do about that. Here's what I can't do about it.
Yeah.
This is just the moment." I mean, is that kinda what I'm hearing you say?
I think you're right. Like a good example would be like when I've been alone with both my kids while my husband's working for like 8 hours, and my son's having a really rough day, and I also have no energy because I have chronic health issues, and I'm at the end of my rope, and something intense is happening with one of my kids, and my husband's not available because he's working. And then maybe I start getting really overstimulated, I start getting really triggered, I start like lashing out at like whatever, and then finally my husband comes out, he's all activated. I mean, the reality is like when we talk about it later, it's like I didn't have enough support to be able to manage the demands of the day internally in myself and externally in the environment, because he had like 15 calls or whatever. And then, he can be like, I'm really sorry that I wasn't there for you in that moment. And that helps me be like, okay, is it okay to say a swear word or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll
I was
bleep
like,
it out if it's
okay.
too much.
I was
I
like,
don't
it's
know.
like the default is like, I'm a mom and I just yelled at my kids. And
Yeah.
I'm perpetuating, you know, a way of parenting that I didn't want to. And I'm
Mhm.
not quote unquote like breaking the cycle. And the reality is that like I wasn't set up to be able to navigate the complexity of all of this on my own for 8 hours, 5 days a week, with the chronic health issues that I have and with my own neurodivergence. Like it's just a lot. And so having those conversations with him has been really helpful, or even being able to see, like, I notice you got, this is me to him, like, I noticed like this reaction came out for you. Like, that seems really connected to the way you were parented, and like maybe stuff around that. And then we can kind of talk about it. But it's just giving space, like, we talk about a lot in NARM, for the complexity of what's happening in any given moment, and allowing that complexity to exist without defaulting back to this very simplistic, I'm a parent. So I'm glad that we have a family that's trying to create space for that complexity and has the ability to like name and repair some of those systemic failures. The reality is like people have to work. We don't have, a nanny or someone that's like supporting us. So that's just kind of what it is. And I think like this other piece that like is coming to me as I'm talking is in a lot of the work that I've done as a therapist, I've held space for, people to be able to hold like my parent did the best they could and it wasn't good enough, right? Like we're finally having space to acknowledge like the pain that our parents have done to us, even though, we've needed to see them in this protected light for much of our life. So I've done that a ton as a therapist. This other side that's coming up for me now is I'm the parent that's acknowledging I am doing the best that I can and it's not enough.
Yeah.
Like, so now I'm holding the other side of it and really having like empathy and compassion for, and again, still holding both, but like having empathy and compassion for this other side, which is like we are truly doing the best that we can. And it's highly likely that some of the time, much of the time, whatever your life looks like, we are misattuning in some way. So there's just been a big learning curve. It's a big learning curve.
Again, it's like you're reading my mind in terms of what I wanted to ask you. I'm like, Amanda, help me with this. Because looking again at your body of work and the things that you've shared, you've spoken about this humility of being able to one day say to your kids, I did the best I could, and I can see some things weren't enough. So I've been curious, how do you imagine those repair conversations looking like from a NARM perspective? Maybe you were already kind of speaking to that.
I'm already having them. I can just like think of a recent example. Like last week I had a conversation with my son where, I tried to like boil it down to humanity and then also take accountability. And so some of the language I use is like, I apologize for whatever I said. Maybe I raised my voice or I handled something in a way that I didn't want to handle it. So I apologize for that. And then I also come back to like, this is my first time being a mom and I am learning with you. And there are times when I get it wrong and I want you to know that I'm sorry and that like X, Y, and Z wasn't okay. So like I want to name the parts that like were not okay and then also make space for the fact that, we're learning together. I have 2 kids. My oldest kid is obviously my first kid, so I've been a mom as long as he's been alive. And so he's learning how to be a human person and I'm learning how to be a human mother. And again, the intersection, and we're learning how to be a family and we're learning how like especially when like autism enters the chat, like we've had to change and adapt and be creative and figure out again our own way of doing things. Every parenting workshop or class I've ever taken like does not apply. And so like I'm truly figuring it out and I'm getting it wrong a lot and then I'm eventually getting it more right through this trial and error. So I just try to be super upfront with him. I have beautiful, like emotionally intelligent, like articulate children, which so cool. So I love that we're able to have those kinds of conversation and he's not even 5 yet, but I imagine continuing that and like expanding on that as they continue to get older. Like I know we've had some really powerful conversations like at that first retreat we were on, Emily Ruth, like where I was just sitting there in awe of like these other moms who are further down the journey who like have like physical like sit down conversations with their kids in their 20s and say like I didn't do it all right, and their kids share with them like, yeah, and here's X, Y, and Z. Here's like what you didn't get right, and here's why it affected me. And I was just like stunned by that. Like, think about your own life. Like, what if your parents sat you down and apologized, even 20 years later, and took accountability and said, "I know this hurt you, and I'm sorry." Like, that blew me away, and I was so encouraged by that, and so I know that that kind of conversation will happen when they're older, where I have the opportunity to take accountability and hopefully repair in that retrospective lens, but I'm also trying to build that in real time. And again, I think that's like a powerful piece of the agency where it's like if I'm not constantly shaming myself and telling myself I'm a mom and finding my humanity, then maybe I can start to have that humility with my children and have those conversations as part of their growing up experience and taking accountability throughout the way. I have
Yeah.
no, like, I don't feel like we have enough data to say like how that changes the trajectory, like I think this generation of parents really has intentions and desires to do things differently, but we're sort of the first generation that has the information to and access to the information to do it without an example. So I don't know. I'm curious. I guess I'll keep you posted. Like
Yeah.
maybe this is a good strategy. I don't know, but that is
But
what like we're
I'm with
trying.
you though. I'm with you though. Hearing folks who are maybe, two steps ahead of me, and my children are older than yours. And so, yeah, there's like maybe, I don't know, half a generation or something there. But in hearing these experiences and hearing kind of the fruits of the labor, hearing
Yeah.
what the outcomes are, it gives me hope for our future generations that as we're making these shifts, that there will be, the trajectory of the change will. I'm hopeful that things will dramatically change down the line because of these
Yeah.
seemingly, like you said, maybe small, subtle, in real time things that they actually play out in really big ways. That's my hope.
I think so too. And I'm so again grateful for the NARM community because like when we were on that retreat with those folks, I mean, what a what a powerful way to see an example of parents doing it differently, of like fathers like I mean there's this I don't want to call out specific moments without consent, but I mean there was just these like really
Mhm.
powerful moments where like a male participant said to me after a demo like, I wish my mom had been, like, having these kinds of conversations, or I wish whatever, I don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's just a moment I'm like, it was so important to have, like, an adult man who's emotionally connected enough to acknowledge that to me or to watch, like, this whole group of women who are just, like, bursting with like compassion and depth and just showing these examples of like how being a human could look, how being a mom could look, how being a
Mhm.
dad could look. I mean, it was just, as you know, the gifts of the NARM community are
Mhm.
just everywhere, but like that
Mhm.
was so special and so important to see. I
Yeah.
just loved it. I
Yeah.
loved it.
Life changing.
Life
Truly.
changing, truly life
I mean,
changing.
truly, leaving that space, I just feel like I'm still carrying, just like you're talking about. It's like we
I
still
know.
carry those moments and it is healing. So, yeah,
Yes.
I appreciate you naming that. It's so rich. I'm wondering for you, like what nuances do you wish more trauma-informed spaces understood about neurodivergent parenting?
I first want to just say that not even just neurodivergent parenting, but neurodivergence in general. Like, I think another big piece that was important for me is for a long time, I processed all of maybe some of my differences or like what the industry would call like symptoms through the lens of trauma and not understanding my own neurodivergence. And so in that way, I was caught up on that train of like trying to fix. And so like once I got some of the diagnoses that I did, it allowed me to move from trying to fix to accommodating.
Mm.
Again, not saying like this can never get better and I should stop trying and just accept it, but like this is a reality of how my brain and body works. And I don't have to effort against that. I can just do things that support how I exist in the world. And so separating out like what is trauma, what is neurodivergence, like what is these expectations, it's like a constant sort of, parsing, but that one piece has been so important. So, like, are there parts of your client's story that could be explained by neurodivergence? And what do we gain from moving towards an accommodation model versus a efforting against? Because
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I began using healing as a nicer way to say fixing, even
Yeah.
though I didn't mean to. And so the accommodation model has been like really important for me, and just noticing that like I do better when I'm accommodated versus like that deficit based model or this even like wound based model that I had been operating in. So I think that's important. And then I think like one of the reasons why that first retreat worked for me was because it was a small setting with a few folks where we had really deep, meaningful conversations. When we continue to like make spaces for all humans, thinking like what accommodations, not just for the person, but for the space, like how are ways that we can structure this setting and this environment to support different types of nervous systems and different types of brains? How can we make this more accessible is a big piece of like what I'm thinking through, especially with my work in like Neurodivergent Family Guide. Like I was reviewing this one pumpkin patch, which I know sounds unrelated, but they're like, oh, like our ground is ADA compliant, which means wheelchair kids with wheelchairs can come here. Great.
Mm-hmm.
None of the rides and experiences were wheelchair accommodated. So this person
Mm.
could come to this place, but they couldn't meaningfully engage in it in the way a child wants to. And I think that's another thing to think about. Like, are our accessibility initiatives allowing people to come to a space? Great. But on top of that, can they meaningfully participate in this space,
Mm.
in this training, in this therapy group, in this whatever? Is there an opportunity for them to meaningfully participate, not just show up? And right now, a lot of places, the bar is like, we have headphones, you can come.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much more than that.
Which, again, you're naming like this is an environmental failure.
Yeah,
So, how
exactly.
can we address this? Literally, this is an environmental failure. So, how can we address this in real time?
I did another podcast on Monday, and we kind of got into that same question because she's like, what's the biggest way you've come to like support yourself in your parenting journey? I was like, I had to make it. I made it. I made a community. Luckily, like I like making stuff. Like I'm a mid-level social worker. Like I do love one-on-one. I do appreciate systemic, but that like mid-community level is where I thrive. And so I just had to make it. I started, a community for caregivers of neurodivergent children. And that's been the single most important thing I've done to support myself in this journey. But I think like what you're saying, like sometimes we have to reinvent it and we have to make it and we have to educate ourselves first on like, what does this group of people need to meaningfully participate in whatever I'm doing? How do we support these folks? And it might mean that we have to make it or recreate it or
Yeah.
reimagine it or be humble and say like, I didn't think about that. I'm going to make a change. Or, I thought I was being inclusive. I don't know if I actually am. Like that, yeah, humility, transparency, accountability piece feels important.
Wow. Amanda, there's so much here.
I
I
know.
think I have
I
about 15 more questions for you, and I'm looking at the clock going, oh. But you did just name, you created this community. So maybe,
Yeah.
before we close, I'd love for you to share with our listeners, what is it that you've created and who do you serve and how can folks get in contact with you? That's a lot of things, but
Yeah.
hit on those bullet points, what feels right.
You got it. You got it. So, Neurodivergent Family Guide is this organization that I've put together and is starting to grow with more folks who want to support it, which is awesome. So it is serving mostly the suburbs of the Chicagoland area, and we do events. So we do like yoga and coffee. We do cocktail hours, we do educational events, we learn from, OTs. Like, we try to balance between support, education, and social, and creating spaces for community with people who truly get like what your experience is. Like I said, like I bought all the big name, like, parenting books and parenting courses and followed like all the folks. And I'm like, none of this works. Like, I just literally, none of this works for my situation. I went to like, what am I doing wrong? Like,
Mhm.
and I'm like, then I start talking to folks who are in a similar situation to me. I'm like, okay, you are dealing with this too. You are handling it this way. You are using this resource. So, on top of that, like community piece, I also try to review spaces and assess their accessibility and inclusivity. In the future, I'd like to provide education to businesses and places who want to become more inclusive and accessible. And then I like to share events and providers that are neuro-affirming or sensory friendly. So if you are in the Chicagoland area and you want to do that, it's at ND Family Guide. And then I share, like you were mentioning, just about like my musings on parenting, neurodivergence, and share my art too. It's at AMMA.KLO. So Amma Klo. Yeah. So if you're interested in not local specific,
Yeah.
that would be where you could find me. Not seeing clients right now, but this is the way that I'm trying to contribute to the world at this point in time.
Yeah, and you're contributing a lot. I mean, I know I'm clear down in Arizona, and I've been impacted in really
Thank you.
beautiful, rich, deep ways, so I just so
Thank you.
appreciate the work that you're doing and grateful that you're in our community and that we
Oh, thank you.
can learn from you and learn from each other and just, yeah, so appreciative of the time that we've been able to spend together.
I know. I wish I could hug you, and
I
I'm
know.
glad
Can we
we
do a Zoom
finally.
hug? How do we do that? Yes, Amanda. Yeah, so appreciate you. Okay, so folks, those links, we're going to put them in the show notes. And gosh, maybe there'll be like future, if we can project this out, maybe there'll be chapters out around the country if folks are
I
interested in
love
the work
that.
that you're doing. How cool would it be if folks can learn from you and what you're
Oh my
doing and
gosh.
bring that to their own communities? That's where my brain went. So I'm just planting a seed.
Spread it across the world.
If folks want to get in contact with Amanda and learn from what she's doing, we'll have those links in the show notes. So
Perfect.
thank you, Amanda.
Thank you so much for having me. Hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode. To find more information about our guest, check the show notes or visit us at complextraumatrainingcenter.com/transforming trauma. As a mental health professional, your commitment to healing and growth inspires us. We at the Complex Trauma Training Center are committed to supporting you in your well-being and success. That's why we're honored to invite you to our Space Program 2026, an inner development program of support and self-discovery for therapists on the personal, interpersonal, and transpersonal levels. Please visit complextraumatrainingcenter.com and secure your spot in the 2026 Space Program.